In a weathered auto shop on the outskirts of town, Marcus Chen works tirelessly on a 1965 Aston Martin DB5, his calloused hands moving with practiced precision over every inch of chrome and steel. For months, he's poured his heart into restoring this masterpiece for Victoria Sterling, an heiress whose family name carries more weight than the vintage car's solid frame. His dedication shows in the bandages wrapped around his fingers, stained with motor oil and traces of blood from countless hours of meticulous work. What he doesn't know is that tonight, as he tightens the final bolt, Victoria stands in the showroom, confessing a secret that will change both their lives forever. Could a man who values honest work over social status be the key to unlocking an heiress's guarded heart? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Dawn stretches its fingers through the workshop's dusty windows, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. Marcus Chen's boots crunch on scattered metal shavings as he makes his way to the ancient coffee maker in the corner, a peculiar contraption he'd rebuilt himself years ago. The aroma of dark roast mingles with the familiar scents of motor oil and metal polish that have become as much a part of him as his own skin. At 58, Marcus moves with the deliberate grace of someone who has spent decades perfecting his craft. His workshop, Chen's Classic Restorations, bears the weathered dignity of 30 years' careful cultivation. Every tool hangs in its designated spot, each workspace meticulously organized despite the apparent chaos of ongoing projects. The morning light catches the edges of his prized collection of handcrafted wrenches, each one modified specifically for working on rare European classics. The Aston Martin DB5 commands the central bay, its silver birch paintwork still waiting to be restored. Marcus runs his hand along its fender, feeling the stories beneath his fingertips. This car represents more than just another project. It's a piece of history, a testament to an era when machines were built to last, to be understood, to be loved. He settles onto his worn leather stool, comparing two sets of documents spread across his workbench. The first, original factory specifications. For the DB5's engine timing, yellowed with age but preserved with reverent care. The second, his own notebooks, filled with 3 decades of accumulated wisdom, modifications and solutions for problems the factory never anticipated. The phone rings, an old rotary model that his daughter keeps begging him to replace. Things, he always tells her, work better the old way. Marcus lets it ring twice, wiping his hands on a shop rag before picking up. Chen's Classic Restorations. Mr. Chen. The voice belongs to James, the Sterling family's butler. Miss Sterling wishes to know if she might stop by this morning to check on the progress of her grandfather's car. Marcus glances at the Aston Martin. He's been dreading this visit, not because the work isn't progressing, it is, methodically and precisely, but because of how these interactions leave him feeling afterward. Victoria Sterling carries herself with a grace that makes his workshop feel suddenly shabby, though she's never once given any indication that she sees it that way. The timing chain is disassembled, he says, his voice professional and measured. But she's welcome to come. I can explain what we're doing and why. After hanging up, Marcus returns to the car, opening the hood with the careful reverence of a priest preparing for service. The engine bay gleams with partial restoration, a testament to hundreds of hours of patient labor. He adjusts his work light, checking the bandages on his fingers before reaching for a wrench. The wounds beneath are healing, but slowly, the price of insisting on doing the most delicate work himself. His mind drifts to the first time Victoria Sterling walked into his shop 3 months ago. She'd arrived in a modern luxury SUV, but had eyes only for the classics lined up in his bays. Unlike so many wealthy clients, she knew cars, really knew them. She spoke of compression ratios and valve timing with genuine understanding, and when she mentioned her grandfather's DB5, her voice carried the weight of real emotion. Marcus checks his watch. She'll be here soon. He could clean up, change his shirt, make some gesture toward the social gulf between them. Instead, he does what he's always done. He gets back to work, letting his hands tell the story of who he is and what he values. The morning sun climbs higher, and the familiar symphony of his workshop plays on. The tick of cooling metal, the subtle creak of the old building settling, the soft click of precision tools against carefully machined parts. This is his world, built by decades of dedication. And as he works, Marcus reflects that some forms of nobility have nothing to do with birth or wealth, and everything to do with the quiet dignity of doing things right. Victoria Sterling stands before the imposing family portrait in the manor's east wing, her reflection ghosting across its gilded frame. The painting, commissioned for her grandfather's 70th birthday, captures the Sterling dynasty in oils. And careful lies, everyone perfectly positioned, perfectly poised, perfectly miserable. Even now, 5 years after his passing, her grandfather's eyes seem to follow her, carrying that familiar mix of expectation and gentle understanding. The morning light streaming through 30-foot windows illuminates dust motes that dance around. Her coffee cup, plain ceramic, a quiet rebellion against the family's Wedgwood collection. At 45, Victoria has mastered the art of small defiances. Her charcoal pantsuit is Savile Row, but her boots are crafted for garage floors rather than galas. Her mother would call it unseemly, this fascination with mechanical things, just as she'd called every one of Victoria's interests that didn't fit the Sterling template. Miss Sterling. James appears in the doorway, his silver hair catching the light. I've contacted Mr. Chen. He's expecting you this morning. Victoria's heart quickens at the mention of the mechanic's name, though her exterior remains composed. Thank you, James. I'll take the Porsche today. Your mother asked me to remind you about the Foundation luncheon at 1, James adds, his tone carefully neutral. After 30 years of service, he's perfected the art of delivering unwelcome news. Of course she did. Victoria sets down her coffee cup. The Sterling Foundation luncheons, quarterly exercises in performative philanthropy where her mother parades eligible bachelors past her like show ponies. At 45, Victoria's unmarried status has become what her mother calls an organizational concern. She makes her way to the garage, her heels clicking against marble floors that transition to polished concrete. Here, in this climate-controlled sanctuary, sits her grandfather's collection. 12 pristine automobiles, each representing a chapter of automotive history, all except the empty space where the DB5 should be. Victoria remembers summer afternoons, spent in that passenger seat, her grandfather teaching her about compression ratios and valve timing. Cars are like people, Vicky, he'd say, hands resting on the wooden steering wheel. The truly special ones have souls. You just have to learn to listen for them. She'd learned to listen. More than that, she'd learned to speak their language. In secret, she'd studied mechanical engineering through correspondence courses, hiding textbooks behind classic literature covers. Her grandfather had known, of course. He'd left her his tools in his will, German, English, and Italian sets, each meticulously maintained. Her mother had been horrified. Tools? For Victoria, the Porsche's engine purrs to life, a sound that never fails to center her. The drive to Chen's workshop takes 20 minutes. 20 minutes of freedom between the suffocating weight of Sterling Manor and the world of honest work she craves. She thinks of Marcus Chen's hands, careful and competent, treating her grandfather's car with the reverence it deserves. His quiet dignity stands in sharp contrast to the performance of, well, she's grown so tired of navigating. At a red light, Victoria catches her reflection in the rearview mirror. The confident exterior she presents to the world masks a deeper truth. At 45, she's finally ready to acknowledge that the life mapped out for her, the safe marriage, to someone of suitable breeding, The ceremonial board positions, the carefully curated social calendar, feels like a beautifully appointed prison. The light turns green, and Victoria accelerates perhaps a bit more than strictly necessary. Ahead lies Marcus's workshop, where grease and honest labor replace pretense, where value is measured in skill and dedication rather than ancestral holdings. There she can be the person her grandfather always saw in her, someone who understands that true worth lies not in what you own, but in what you can create, repair and nurture with your own hands. The Porsche's tires crunch over the gravel as Victoria pulls into Chen's classic restorations. She parks beside a weathered pickup truck, Marcus's, she assumes, and takes a moment to compose herself. Through the workshop's open bay doors, she can see him bent over the DB5's engine, his movements precise and measured. He doesn't look up, though she knows he must have heard her arrive. The workshop's atmosphere wraps around her like a familiar blanket. The mingled scents of metal and oil, the quiet ticking of cooling engines, the subtle symphony of tools against metal. Her heels click against concrete as she approaches, and now Marcus does look up, straightening slowly. "Miss Sterling." He wipes his hands on a shop rag, leaving the evidence of honest work on his fingers. "Come see what we've found." She moves to the car, careful to keep a professional distance, even as her eyes drink in the progress. The engine bay gleams with newly restored components, each piece telling its own story of patience and precision. Marcus begins explaining the timing chain assembly, his voice taking on the quiet authority of someone who knows his craft intimately. "The original chain had stretched," he says, pointing with a scarred finger. "Common problem with these models. But look here." He gestures to a subtle modification. "Your grandfather had someone install a better tensioner system. Custom work, probably late 60s. Good engineering. Saved the engine a lot of wear." Victoria leans in closer, inhaling the familiar scent of mechanical things. "He never mentioned that modification. Most people wouldn't notice it." Marcus's voice carries a note of appreciation. "But whoever did the work knew these engines inside and out. Mind if I show you something else?" He moves to his workbench, retrieving a leather-bound folder she hasn't seen before. Inside are maintenance records, each page filled with meticulous handwriting. "Found these tucked behind the spare tire. Your grandfather kept detailed notes. Every service, every modification, every quirk of the car's personality." Victoria's throat tightens as she recognizes her grandfather's precise script. "May I?" Marcus hands her the folder, and their fingers brush momentarily. She settles onto a nearby stool, losing herself in pages that read like a love letter to engineering. Her grandfather's voice seems to rise from the yellowed paper. "Valve. Clearance adjusted to 0.02 inches cold. She runs smoother this way, despite factory specs." "He understood these cars," Marcus says softly. "Not just as machines, but as living things," Victoria finishes. Their eyes meet briefly before both look away. Marcus clears his throat. "The timing chain work will take another week. Then we can start on the transmission. The synchros are original and probably worn," Victoria completes the thought, "especially second gear if I know these cars." A ghost of a smile crosses Marcus's face. "You do know them. My grandfather taught me." She runs her hand along the DB5's fender. "Everyone thought he was wasting his time teaching a girl about cars. But to him, knowledge is never wasted," Marcus says, and something in his tone makes her look up. He's watching her with an expression she can't quite read. The moment stretches between them, filled with unspoken understanding. Then James's reminder about the Foundation luncheon echoes in her mind, and reality reasserts itself. She straightens, resuming her carefully maintained poise. "I should let you get back to work," she says, though everything in her wants to stay, to watch these capable hands bring her grandfather's car back to life. "Will you call if you discover anything else unusual?" Marcus nods, already turning back to the engine, but he pauses, gesturing to the leather folder. "Would you like to take these home?" "The records, I mean. They're yours after all." Victoria considers the folder, thinking of the quiet evenings ahead, filled with foundation reports and social obligations. No, she decides, they belong here, with the car, with someone who understands their value. She leaves him there, surrounded by tools and honest work, the scent of coffee and motor oil clinging to her clothes. In her rearview mirror, the workshop shrinks away, but the memory of Marcus's quiet competence, of that moment of shared understanding, follows her all the way, back to her carefully ordered world. Over the next 3 weeks, Victoria finds increasingly creative reasons to visit the workshop. Each time, she arrives wearing clothes a little more practical than the last, her concessions to elegance giving way to functionality. Marcus says nothing about the transformation, but she catches his approving glance when she shows up in steel-toed boots one Tuesday morning. The workshop's logbook becomes their shared confession booth. Marcus's precise technical notes begin to include observations about his client. Miss Sterling identified incorrect valve spacing by sound alone. Victoria adds her own annotations in elegant script. Mr. Chen's modification to the fuel line brackets shows exceptional understanding of the original engineering. Today she's perched on a worn stool, watching him disassemble the transmission. The morning light streams through dusty windows, catching the silver in his hair and the fresh bandages on his hands. The synchro mesh is worse than we thought, he says, holding up a worn component. See these teeth? They've been trying to tell their story for years, but nobody was listening. Victoria leans closer, inhaling the familiar scent of gear oil and metal. Can you fabricate replacements? Wouldn't be authentic. He shakes his head. I know a specialist in Munich who still machines these. Old-world craftsman, does everything by hand. His eyes meet hers. It'll take time, though, and it won't be cheap. Do it right, she says simply. It's become their shared mantra, this commitment to authenticity. In this workshop, away from the Sterling Foundation's boardroom and her mother's carefully orchestrated social calendar, such decisions feel pure, uncomplicated. Marcus makes a note in the logbook, his handwriting steady despite his wrapped fingers. Victoria notices fresh spots of red seeping through the white gauze. Your hands, part of the work. He flexes his fingers dismissively. Can't always avoid it when you're reaching for perfection. She reaches for the first aid kit she's noticed on his workbench, the one that sees far too much use. May I? He hesitates, then extends his hand. Victoria works in silence, unwrapping the old bandages with the same precision she's watched him apply to the car's most delicate components. His fingers are rough with calluses, marked by decades of dedication to his craft. She cleans each cut carefully, conscious of the intimacy of the moment. My mother would be horrified, she says softly, applying fresh gauze, a Sterling, playing nurse to a mechanic. And what does Victoria think? His voice is quiet, lacking its usual professional distance. She secures the bandage before meeting his eyes. Victoria thinks there's more dignity in these wounds than in all the manicured hands that have ever reached for hers. The workshop seems to hold its breath. Then the phone rings, that ancient rotary model that somehow suits him perfectly. The moment breaks, and they return to their assigned roles, client and craftsman, separated by carefully maintained boundaries. But something has shifted, as subtle yet significant as the worn teeth in the transmission they've been examining. In the logbook, their notes begin to carry new weight. Mr. Chen's understanding of mechanical harmony reflects a deeper wisdom. Miss Sterling's intuition for engineering suggests a soul attuned to precision. As the day winds down, Victoria lingers longer than usual, watching him clean and organize his tools, a ritual she's come to appreciate for its mindful care. The setting sun paints the workshop in amber tones, softening the industrial edges. Same time tomorrow? She asks, knowing her calendar shows 3 board meetings and a charity luncheon. Marcus nods, already turning back to the workbench. But she catches his reflection in the DB5's polished fender, watching her leave with an expression that mirrors her own reluctance to return to the world beyond the workshop doors. In her car, Victoria inhales deeply, realizing she's come to prefer the honest scents of oil and metal to her mother's carefully curated potpourri. She starts the engine, its purr familiar, but somehow less satisfying than the mechanical symphony she's left behind. Tomorrow she'll wear her old engineering school shirt under her blazer, another small act of defiance, another step toward the person she becomes within those workshop walls. The cream-colored envelope arrives at the workshop on a Tuesday morning, hand-delivered by James. Its heavy paper and gold embossing seem out of place among the honest grime of Marcus's workbench. Inside is an invitation to the Sterling Foundation's annual Heritage Gala, where the restored DB5 is meant to be unveiled as the centerpiece of a classic car exhibition. Marcus studies the invitation while his coffee grows cold. The date is 6 weeks away, tight, but possible, assuming the parts from Munich arrive on schedule. It's the note, handwritten at the bottom, that gives him pause. Black tie required. A proper suit will be provided. Catherine Sterling, Victoria's mother. Even her handwriting carries authority. He's still holding the invitation when Victoria arrives earlier than usual. She spots it immediately, her expression clouding. I see Mother has made her move. The timeline is ambitious, he says carefully, professional distance firmly in place. The timeline isn't what concerns her. Victoria settles onto her usual stool, the one he's started thinking of as hers. The gala is her annual masterpiece of social engineering. Every eligible bachelor of suitable breeding, within 3 states, will be there. Her tone carries years of weary resignation. Marcus focuses on adjusting a valve, his bandaged hands steady despite the strange ache in his chest. Sounds like an opportunity for networking. Sounds like a cage. Victoria runs, her hand along the DB5's fender.
She's already chosen the perfect candidate, Thomas Wellington III, recently widowed, impeccable bloodline. Enough old money to buy small countries. She laughs, but there's no humor in it. He collects cars too, you know. Keeps them pristine.
In climate-controlled garages, never drives them, never gets his hands dirty. Marcus tightens the valve with perhaps more force than necessary. Some people see cars as investments. Some people see everything as an investment. Victoria's voice softens, including their daughters. The workshop falls quiet, except for the subtle sounds of metal on metal. Through the open bay doors, they can hear the world going about its business, a world of clear social boundaries and carefully maintained hierarchies. The drivetrain will need testing before the exhibition, Marcus says finally. Real road. Conditions, not just garage runs. Victoria's eyes light up with understanding. That would require several test drives. Extended ones. For safety. Naturally. He makes a note in the logbook, keeping his tone professional. Maybe some evening runs when the roads are clear. Mother would hate that. A smile plays at the corners of her mouth. Schedule them all. The moment is broken by the sharp tap of heels on concrete. Catherine Sterling appears in the workshop doorway like an apparition from another world. Her designer suit and perfectly coiffed hair an affront to the workspace's functional beauty. Victoria, darling. Her voice carries the chill of old money. I thought I'd find you here. Again. She surveys the workshop with practiced disdain, gaze sliding past Marcus as if he were part of the machinery. The foundation board meeting. Started 10 minutes ago? Victoria straightens, her work clothes and oil-smudged hands a silent rebellion. I'm monitoring the restoration progress, Mother, as grandfather would have wanted. Your grandfather, Catherine says carefully, understood the importance of maintaining appropriate relationships with service providers. She turns to Marcus, acknowledging him for the first time. I trust you received the invitation, Mr. Chen. To have your measurements sent to James. We can't have you attending in work clothes. Marcus meets her gaze steadily. The car will be ready, he says simply. See that it is. Catherine turns back to her daughter. Victoria, The car shall arrive at the gala under its own power, thoroughly tested and immaculate. After that, I expect this phase to conclude naturally." Her smile is practiced perfection. "Thomas is quite looking forward to discussing his collection with you." After they leave, Marcus returns to his work, trying to lose himself in the familiar rhythm of restoration. But the invitation seems to mock him from the workbench, its gold lettering catching the light like warning signs. Evening light filters through the workshop windows, painting everything in shades of amber and gold. Victoria sits cross-legged, on a clean shop blanket spread across the concrete floor, a grease-stained factory manual open in her lap. Her blazer hangs forgotten on a hook, her silk blouse replaced by one of Marcus's spare work shirts. "The factory manual's wrong," Marcus says, pointing to a diagram with a bandaged finger. "See how they route the oil return line? Works fine in theory, but in practice, it creates a pressure point against the frame," Victoria finishes, eyes bright with understanding. "That's why grandfather's notes mentioned a persistent leak." Marcus nods, pleased but not surprised by her quick grasp of engineering principles. Most mechanics would just replace the gaskets repeatedly, but there's a better way. He reaches for his notebook, sketching a modified routing with practiced strokes. Victoria leans closer, her shoulder brushing his, both of them too absorbed in the technical discussion to maintain their usual careful distance. "You're teaching me things that took you decades to learn," she says softly. "Most mechanics guard their secrets. Most clients don't care to learn." He glances at her, then back to the diagram. "Your grandfather believed in understanding things deeply, not just cars, everything." Victoria traces the modified oil line with her finger. "He used to say that true appreciation comes from knowledge. That's why he taught me about cars, even though everyone said it wasn't appropriate." "And what did you teach him in return?" She smiles, remembering. "Art history. He said if I was going to learn about mechanical beauty, he should learn about artistic beauty." We spent hours in his study, looking at books about Renaissance sculptures while discussing engine timing. Marcus sets down his pencil, considering her words. "Beauty is beauty," he says finally, "whether it's shaped by chisels or wrenches." Their eyes meet, and for a moment, the workshop feels like a sanctuary from the world's rigid categories and expectations. Then Victoria reaches into her bag, pulling out a leather-bound book. "Your turn to learn something," she says, opening to a marked page. "If Mother insists on you attending the gala, you should understand what you're looking at when you see the Sterling Art Collection." She begins explaining the significance of brush strokes and color theory with the same passion he brings to engineering. Marcus listens intently, his rough hands careful as he turns the glossy pages, asking questions that reveal a mind accustomed to understanding complex systems. "It's all about seeing the layers," Victoria explains, pointing to a detailed analysis of a master painting, "like how you taught me to diagnose engine problems by sound. Different frequencies tell different stories." "The art of paying attention," Marcus muses, and she nods, pleased by his understanding. They work late into the evening, trading knowledge like secrets. Victoria learns about the subtle music of different metal alloys under stress, while Marcus discovers the language of light and shadow in classical paintings. The workshop's logbook fills with unusual notes, mechanical principles alongside art references, technical diagrams next to sketches of famous sculptures. When Victoria finally stands to leave, she pauses by the DB5. "Mother thinks she's punishing you with this gala invitation," she says, running her hand along the car's curved fender. "But she doesn't understand that knowledge is never a burden." Marcus watches her gather her things, noting how naturally she moves through his world now. "The other guests," he says carefully, "they'll know I don't belong in their circle. You understand beauty, craft, and dedication." Victoria's voice is firm. "You belong anywhere such things are valued." She smiles, a hint of mischief in her eyes. "Besides, you'll know more about the paintings in the Sterling Gallery than most of them now." After she leaves, Marcus sits with the art book she forgot, or perhaps deliberately left, on his workbench. His bandaged hands look out of place against its elegant cover, but when he opens it, he sees notes in Victoria's handwriting along the margins, pointing out connections between artistic principles and engineering concepts. Two worlds meeting on the same page. He carefully places the book beside his technical manuals, where it looks both completely wrong and absolutely right. Like so many things lately, it defies easy categorization. Catherine Sterling waits in her study, a room designed to intimidate with old-money elegance. Morning light reflects off the antique desk, where a small velvet box rests. Inside, her mother's engagement ring, 6 carats of sterling family history. "You're spending an unseemly amount of time at that garage," she says as Victoria enters. The board is beginning to talk. Victoria remains standing, refusing the offered seat. At 45, she's long past the age where her mother's disapproval could make her feel small. The board can talk all they want. Grandfather's car deserves proper attention. The car. Catherine's laugh is precise, practiced. "Darling, we both know this isn't about the car." She opens the ring box with manicured fingers. "Thomas asked about you again at the club yesterday. He's being quite patient, considering." "I'm not interested in Thomas's patience." Victoria's voice is steady, though her hands clench slightly. "Or his classic car collection that he treats like museum pieces." "No, you prefer spending time with a mechanic who can't even afford to replace that antiquated phone in his workshop." Catherine closes the ring box with a sharp snap. "Your grandfather's eccentricities were charming because he had the sterling name to protect him. You don't have that luxury. What I have is his trust, his understanding that value isn't measured by account balances." "Value?" Catherine rises, moving to the window overlooking their manicured gardens. "That man has you using mechanics terminology now. Next you'll be suggesting we invite him to dinner." Victoria thinks of Marcus's hands, careful and competent, teaching her the language of engines, of conversations that range from engineering to art history, each word weighted with genuine interest rather than social requirement. "He has more authentic wisdom than anyone at your charity luncheons. Wisdom won't maintain the sterling foundation or your position on the board." Catherine turns, her expression softening to something almost pitying. "Darling, you're 45. This romantic notion of the noble working class needs to end." "It's not a notion, Mother, it's—" Victoria stops herself, realizing any defense will only confirm her mother's suspicions. "It's what?" Catherine's voice could freeze champagne. "Don't tell me you're developing feelings for the help. He's not the help. He's a master craftsman who wraps his bleeding hands in gauze because he can't afford proper tools." Catherine returns to her desk, running one finger along the ring box. "I've been patient, Victoria. I've allowed this fascination with cars and mechanics because I thought it would pass. But you're a sterling. It's time to remember what that means." Victoria looks at the ring box, thinking of Marcus's workshop, where value is measured in precision and dedication, rather than carats and bloodlines. "I know exactly what being a sterling means. Grandfather taught me." "Your grandfather is dead." Catherine's words fall like hammer blows. "And with him went the luxury of these working-class fantasies. Thomas will be at the gala. He's prepared to make an announcement, with or without your prior agreement. You can't force me to marry him." "No." Catherine opens a drawer, removing a folder. "But I can replace you on the board. Your grandfather's legacy, the charitable works you've championed, all of it can be reassigned. After all, a woman who spends her days in a garage clearly isn't suited for such responsibilities." Victoria feels the weight of generations pressing down on her shoulders. Every portrait in the study seems to watch, judging, demanding compliance with rules written in old money and older prejudice. "Think carefully, darling." Catherine's tone softens to maternal concern that burns worse than her anger. "You have until the gala to come to your senses. After that," she gestures to the folder, letting the threat hang unspoken. Victoria leaves the study, her steps echoing through halls lined with sterling ancestors. She passes the space where her grandfather's portrait used to hang, removed because he insisted on being painted in his driving gloves rather than formal attire. In her suite, she finds a garment bag laid across her bed. Inside is a designer. Gown for the gala, perfectly tailored, perfectly appropriate, perfectly suffocating. On her desk, next to investment reports and board minutes, lies the latest note from the workshop's logbook, written in Marcus's steady hand. Some restorations reveal the true spirit that was always there, waiting to be freed. Victoria touches the paper, feeling the subtle impressions of his writing, and makes a decision that would scandalize every sterling portrait in the house. She changes into work clothes and heads for the garage. There are still hours before sunset, and she knows exactly where she needs to be. The discovery comes during a late evening inspection of the DB5's trunk. Marcus is replacing the original carpet when his hand brushes against something tucked into the spare tire well, a packet of letters preserved in waxed paper, hidden there decades ago. He's still sitting on the workshop floor, letters spread around him, when Victoria arrives. She's wearing her work clothes, her face bearing the taut expression he's come to recognize as a sign of conflict with her mother. "What's wrong?" she asks, seeing his expression. Marcus hands her the first letter, dated 1965. "I think you should read this." Victoria settles beside him on the floor, unfolding paper that has held its creases for half a century. Her grandfather's handwriting fills the page, but it's the recipient's name that makes her breath catch. Chen Mingwei. "Your father?" She looks at Marcus, who nods slowly. "The best mechanic in Hong Kong at the time," he says softly. "He specialized in European sports cars." Victoria begins reading aloud. "My dear Mingwei, the DB5 has arrived safely in London. Your modifications to the suspension are, as always, pure genius. More than that, your understanding of what makes these machines special goes beyond mere engineering." She moves through the letters chronologically, her voice growing softer as the story unfolds. The correspondence spans years, two men from different worlds, bound by their love of cars and craft. Her grandfather, writing about more than just mechanical details, sharing his hopes for his granddaughter, who showed such promise with engines. Mingwei, responding with technical insights and gentle wisdom about letting children find their own path. "He knew," Victoria whispers. "Grandfather knew about my engineering studies. He was encouraging them through your father all along." Marcus picks up another letter, this one from 1972. "Your grandfather helped my father establish his first workshop in America, gave him contacts, vouched for his expertise with collectors. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't know. Not until now." He hands her a final letter, dated just months before her grandfather's death. "This one's addressed to me." Victoria unfolds it carefully. The handwriting is shakier, but still distinct. "Dear Marcus, I write this knowing my time is short. The DB5 will pass to my granddaughter Victoria, but it will need restoration. When that day comes, it must be you who does the work. Not because you're Mingwei's son, though he taught you well, but because you understand what these machines truly are. Bridges between worlds, between people who see beauty in precision and possibility in restoration." Her voice falters. Marcus continues. "Victoria has her mother's strength, but her heart is like mine, happiest among tools and engines, finding truth in things that must be earned through dedication. When the time comes, help her restore more than just the car, help her restore faith in the path she's chosen." Silence fills the workshop as the weight of the revelation settles around them. Victoria looks at the DB5, seeing it with new eyes, not just her grandfather's car, but a carefully crafted connection reaching across decades and social boundaries. "All these hours in the workshop," she says finally, "the way you've taught me, encouraged me to learn. You were fulfilling his request?" Marcus meets her gaze steadily. "At first, but then it became about watching you light up when you mastered a new technique, about seeing how naturally you understand these machines. He stops, careful of boundaries that suddenly feel as thin as the old paper between them. Victoria looks down at the letters, physical proof that someone had seen her true self all along, had planned for her happiness with the same precision he'd applied to engineering. "Mother wants me to marry Thomas Wellington," she says suddenly. "She's threatening my position at the foundation if I don't agree." Marcus absorbs this, his face unreadable. "And what do you want?" "I want..." Victoria runs her fingers over her grandfather's signature, drawing strength from his words. "I want to be in a world where dedication matters more than dividends, where grease under fingernails isn't a character flaw, where," she meets his eyes, "where hearts can be restored." As carefully as engines, the workshop holds its breath. Outside, the world continues its familiar rhythm, unaware that inside these walls, decades-old plans and present-day emotions are meshing like perfectly engineered gears. Marcus carefully gathers the letters, placing them in his father's old toolbox, the same one he'd used on this very car decades ago. "Sometimes," he says quietly, "restoration reveals things that were meant to be all along." The morning newspaper lands on Marcus's workbench with a soft thud. James delivers it personally, his usual professional demeanor tinged with concern. The Society page headline reads, "Sterling heiress's hands-on approach to car restoration." Raises eyebrows. Below, a grainy photo shows Victoria in work clothes, laughing as she hands Marcus a wrench. The article is carefully worded but pointed, noting her unprecedented hours spent at Chen's classic restorations and questioning the necessity of such personal involvement in what should be a simple business transaction. Marcus reads it twice, his coffee growing cold beside him. The paper manages to say nothing explicit while implying everything, right down to a casual mention of Thomas Wellington's recent widowerhood and his long-standing appreciation of the Sterling family's contribution to society. The workshop phone rings, that ancient rotary model that's witnessed so many conversations. This time, it's Victoria. "I assume you've seen it," she says without preamble. "James just brought it." He pauses, choosing his words carefully. "Your mother's work?" Her friend owns the paper. Victoria's voice is tight with controlled anger. "But that's just the opening move. The foundation board meets this afternoon. Emergency session." Marcus looks at the DB5, now nearly restored. In the morning light, it seems to hold all the weight of their combined history. "What do you need me to do?" "I need..." She stops, and he can hear voices in the background. "I have to go. Mother's here. Just don't read tomorrow's paper." The line goes dead. Marcus spends the morning working on the car's electrical system, trying to lose himself in the precise patterns of wires and connections. But his mind keeps returning to the photograph, to the unguarded moment of joy it captured. Joy that now seems dangerous, threatening to unravel two lives carefully built around different kinds of expectations. Around noon, a sleek modern Mercedes pulls up outside. Thomas Wellington emerges, every inch the polished aristocrat in his bespoke suit. He studies the workshop with the detached interest of someone examining a quaint cultural exhibit. "Mr. Chen." His voice carries the cultured tones of old money. "I hoped we might have a word." Marcus wipes his hands, noting the contrast between his shop rag and Thomas's silk pocket square. "About the article?" "About appropriate boundaries." Thomas runs a manicured finger along the DB5's fender. "I have a rather extensive collection myself, you know, all maintained by an excellent service team who understand their place in the natural order of things." "Victoria understands cars," Marcus says quietly. "She has a genuine gift for engineering." "Yes, well, these little hobbies can be charming in their way." Thomas's smile doesn't reach his eyes. "But she's a Sterling. After we're married, she'll have more suitable pursuits to occupy her time." The presumption in his tone makes Marcus's bandaged hands clench slightly. "Have you asked what she wants?" "What she wants," Thomas laughs softly. "My good man, surely you don't imagine..." He pauses, studying Marcus with new calculation. "Ah, I see the problem now." He reaches into his jacket, withdraws a checkbook. Name your price. Excuse me? To complete the restoration quickly and without these unnecessary tutorials. To remember your place. He writes a number, tears out the check. I'm told you're having some financial difficulties. Equipment upgrades needed, loans to repay. This should help you return to a more professional distance. Marcus looks at the check, then at the DB5. In its reflection, he sees Victoria bending over the engine, her face lit with understanding as she grasps a complex mechanical principle. He sees her grandfather's letters, carrying decades of carefully laid plans. He sees his father's legacy of craft and dignity. Mr. Wellington, he says quietly, there's something you should understand about restoration. Oh? It's not about returning things to their original state. It's about revealing their true nature. He hands the check back. Some things can't be bought. Some restorations can't be rushed. Thomas's polite mask slips for just a moment, revealing something harder beneath. Don't be foolish, Mr. Chen. The natural order will assert itself. Victoria will do what's expected of her. The only question is whether you'll profit from the inevitable or... He lets the threat hang unfinished. After he leaves, Marcus returns to the car, to the careful work of restoration. But now each component seems weighted with choice and consequence. In the polished chrome, he catches his reflection. A man with bandaged hands, presuming to reach. Across worlds, the workshop phone rings again. This time, when he answers, there's only silence on the line, heavy with things that can't be said, in a world where newspapers turn joy into scandal and love into transaction. The incomplete repair. Invoice sits on Marcus's workbench, Victoria's name at the top, a reminder of what's missing. It's been 2 weeks since the newspaper article, since Thomas Wellington's visit. 2 weeks of silence broken only by formal messages delivered through James, each one more businesslike than the last. The workshop feels different now, larger, emptier despite being filled with the same tools and machines. The stool where Victoria used to sit has been pushed against the wall, gathering dust. Even the DB5 seems to sense the absence, its chrome less brilliant without her appreciation. Marcus works longer hours, his bandaged hands moving with mechanical precision through tasks that once felt like shared discoveries. The logbook entries have become purely technical again. Adjusted valve clearance to factory specifications. Replaced secondary fuel filter. Tested electrical systems. Gone are the observations about engineering intuition. The subtle acknowledgements of growing understanding. Gone is the joy of teaching, of watching someone grasp the soul of a machine. The phone rings, that faithful rotary model that now seems to mock him with its silence between calls. It's James, his voice carrying its usual formal tone but with an undercurrent of sympathy. Mr. Chen, I've been instructed to inform you that Miss Sterling will be unavailable for consultation until after the gala. All further communications should be directed through the Foundation's office. Marcus acknowledges this with a quiet, understood. But before James can hang up, he asks, how is she? A pause, heavy with unspoken understanding. Miss Sterling has been appointed to 3 additional Foundation committees. Her mother feels these responsibilities will help her focus on more appropriate pursuits. Translation. Catherine Sterling is keeping her daughter too busy to breathe, let alone visit a workshop on the wrong side of town. After hanging up, Marcus pulls out his father's old toolbox, now containing both his most precious tools and Victoria's. Grandfather's letters. He rereads the final one, words he's memorized but needs to see again. Help her restore faith in the path she's chosen. How can he help when every path seems blocked by walls of social expectation and family duty? The days blur together, marked only by the steady progress on the car and the growing stack of society pages that James quietly delivers each morning. Each one carries news of Victoria's increased social obligations, charity luncheons, board meetings, carefully orchestrated appearances with Thomas Wellington at cultural events. In the latest photo, she's wearing the kind of elegant outfit that would never know workshop grease. but Marcus sees what others might miss. The slight tension in her smile, the way her hands are clasped as if missing a wrench or diagnostic tool. He works on the DB5 with renewed purpose, understanding now that its restoration has become something more than a mechanical process. Each component he perfects, each system he brings back to life, feels like a message encoded in engineering. Precision. Some things are worth fighting for. Some connections can't be severed by social pressure or family expectations. Late one evening, as he's adjusting the headlamps, he hears gravel crunching outside. But it's not Victoria's Porsche. It's her grandfather's oldest friend, retired Judge Harrison, who occasionally brings him rare parts for vintage restorations. "Thought I'd check on the old girl's progress," the judge says, running an appreciative hand along the DB5's fender. Then, more quietly, and perhaps share some relevant information about Sterling Foundation bylaws. Marcus listens as the judge explains the legal intricacies of board positions and voting rights, the subtle differences between inherited and appointed authority. He doesn't ask why the judge is sharing this now, just as the judge doesn't mention the newspaper articles or the whispered scandal. Edward, Victoria's grandfather, he understood that sometimes the old ways need mechanical adjustment. The judge says finally, "Just as you understand that proper restoration isn't about returning something to its original state, but about ensuring it can move forward under its own power." After the judge leaves, Marcus returns to the car with renewed focus. The gala is 3 weeks away. Every component must be perfect, every system tested and true. Not because Thomas Wellington and Catherine Sterling will be judging his work, but because somewhere in this masterpiece of engineering, Victoria's grandfather had hidden a message about power and independence that took 2 generations to decode. He makes a final entry in the logbook for the day. Some restorations require faith in what others can't yet see. Some engines run on hope as much as fuel. Victoria sits in her grandfather's study, now officially a historical room in Sterling Manor, surrounded by leather-bound books and the lingering scent of pipe tobacco. Judge Harrison stands by the window, holding a document that's turned her world sideways. "Your mother never read the full will," he says, his voice gentle. "She saw the main provisions, the house, the foundation shares, the public bequests, and assumed that was all. But Edward was always more thorough in his planning." Victoria takes the document with trembling hands. It's a codicil to her grandfather's will, sealed until specific conditions were met. Why now? The conditions were precise, to be opened. When the DB5's restoration was nearly complete, and when you had demonstrated, in your grandfather's words, the courage to value craft over class. She reads slowly, each paragraph revealing a new layer of her grandfather's foresight. The Sterling Foundation's voting structure, it seems, was far more complex than her mother understood. While Catherine controls the public face, the real power, the super-voting shares, were placed in a special trust. "He left them to me," Victoria's voice catches. "To you and one other trustee." Harrison hands her another document. Someone he believed would understand the true value of things. The name on the trust document makes her heart stop. Chen Ming Wei, with succession. Writes to his son, Marcus. The Foundation's core mission was never about maintaining social hierarchies, Harrison explains. Edward believed in preserving and celebrating craft, in supporting those who maintain the knowledge of how things work, how to make them whole. Again, Victoria remembers summer afternoons in the garage, her grandfather teaching her about engines while sharing stories of a master mechanic in Hong Kong who understood that restoration was about more than just repairs. "All this time," she whispers, "he was building something larger than we knew." Edward and Ming Wei shared a vision, Harrison says. They believed that true nobility lies in the ability to create, to restore, to understand deeply. The Foundation was meant to bridge worlds, not reinforce their boundaries. The judge pulls out one final document, a letter in her grandfather's handwriting, dated just days before his death. "My dearest Victoria," she reads aloud, "if you're reading this, you've found your way to the truth of things, just as I always knew you would. The Foundation's real purpose is to support those who work with their hands and their hearts, who understand that value isn't in the possession of beautiful things, but in the knowledge of how to keep them alive." She has to stop, emotions threatening to overwhelm her carefully maintained composure. Harrison continues for her. "The DB5 was always more than just a car. It's the physical embodiment of a philosophy, that barriers between worlds can be broken down by shared appreciation for craft and dedication. Mingwei's son Marcus carries his father's gift, the ability to see the soul in machines. Together, you and he can guide the Foundation toward its true purpose." Victoria moves to the window, looking out at the manicured gardens her mother takes such pride in. "She'll fight this. The board cannot override the trust structure. Your grandfather made sure of that." Harrison's voice carries quiet satisfaction. "The gala might be an excellent time to announce the Foundation's renewed commitment to its original mission. Mother's planned for Thomas to announce our engagement at the gala." Victoria turns back to the room, to the evidence of her grandfather's long game. She's already leaked it to the papers. "Ah, yes," Harrison's eyes twinkle. "But I believe there's another announcement that will carry more legal weight. The trust activation precedes any other Foundation business." Victoria looks down at the documents, physical proof that someone had seen her clearly enough to build an escape route into the very structure of her gilded cage. She thinks of Marcus in his workshop, hands bandaged, working to restore more than just a car. Of all the moments they've shared, learning each other's worlds, breaking down barriers neither of them knew were already designed to fall. "The DB5, she says suddenly. "It's not just grandfather's car, is it? It's the key to everything." Harrison nods. "Edward and Mingwei chose it specifically. A masterpiece of engineering that required regular maintenance, ensuring their children would have to work together. They knew that true understanding comes through shared work, through getting your hands dirty." Victoria gathers the documents, her mind already racing ahead to the gala. "I need to see Marcus," she says. "There's restoration work still to be done." "Indeed there is," Harrison agrees, watching her transformation from dutiful daughter to her grandfather's true heir. And not just on the car. Victoria writes her resignation letter at her grandfather's desk, using his old fountain pen, the one he'd used to sign the documents that would eventually set her free. The heavy cream paper bears the Sterling Foundation letterhead, but the words she crafts are entirely her own. "Dear Mother," she begins, then stops, crossing it out. "To the Board of Directors of the Sterling Foundation," she writes instead. Each word feels like both an ending and a beginning. The morning sun streams through leaded glass windows, catching the dust motes that dance above the polished desk. From somewhere in the manor, she can hear her mother's voice directing preparations for tomorrow's gala. Catherine Sterling's carefully orchestrated evening, planned to crown her daughter's submission to tradition, will instead witness something entirely different. Victoria glances at the trust documents spread beside her letter. Her grandfather and Mingwei had built a masterpiece of legal engineering as precise as any mechanical system. Like the DB5's restoration, every component had its purpose, waiting for the right moment to function in harmony. The phone on the desk rings. Her private line. She answers, knowing who it must be. "The car's ready," Marcus says without preamble. His voice carries the quiet certainty she's come to rely on. Every system tested, every component restored. "Like the Foundation will be," she responds, hearing his slight intake of breath at the cryptic comment. "Marcus, there's something you need to know before tomorrow, something our fathers planned together." "I can come to—" he starts, but she cuts him off. "No, not here. I'm coming to the workshop." She glances at her mother's garden party in full swing below. "I need to be somewhere real while I explain this." The drive to Chen's classic restorations gives her time to reflect on the weight of legacy, not the kind measured in trust funds and family names, but the deeper inheritance of values and vision. Her grandfather and Ming Wei had seen beyond their time, beyond social boundaries, to plant seeds that would take decades to flower. Marcus is waiting when she pulls up, his bandaged hands stained with the honest work of final adjustments to the DB5. She hands him the trust documents wordlessly, watching as understanding dawns in his eyes. "They planned all of this," he says, finally. "The restoration, the timing, they knew their children better than we knew ourselves." Victoria runs her hand along the DB5's perfect flank. "This car isn't just a vehicle for transportation, it's a vehicle for transformation." Marcus studies the papers, his expression thoughtful. The Foundation's original mission, supporting craft and dedication over social status. It's everything my father believed in, everything he taught me, everything I believe in too. Victoria takes out her resignation letter. "I've written 2 versions. The first resigns my current position but accepts the trust's authority. The second..." She pulls out another sheet. "The second walks away from everything." Marcus looks at her sharply. "You'd give up the Foundation? If accepting the trust means losing..." She stops, gathering courage. "Losing what matters most." The workshop falls quiet, except for the subtle ticking of the cooling DB5 engine. Through the open bay doors, the setting sun paints everything in shades of possibility. Marcus sets the trust documents on his workbench next to his father's old "Our toolbox." "Your grandfather wrote that some restorations reveal the true nature of things," he says carefully. "Maybe this is about restoring the Foundation to what it was meant to be, about restoring ourselves to who we're meant to be." Victoria moves closer, close enough to smell engine oil and honest work. "And who are we meant to be, Marcus?" He meets, her eyes, all pretense of professional distance, finally falling away. "Partners," he says simply, "in craft, in purpose, in everything if you want that." She thinks of Thomas Wellington's climate-controlled garages, of her mother's carefully curated social circle, of all the pristine, untouchable things that fill her world. Then she looks at Marcus's bandaged hands, at the perfectly restored DB5, at the life she could build, combining the best of both their worlds. Victoria takes her resignation letter, the first version, and places it carefully in the leather-bound folder with the trust documents. The second version she tears in half, letting the pieces fall into the workshop's waste bin. "Tomorrow at the gala," she says, "we're going to restore more than just a car or a foundation. We're going to restore truth to everything they've tried to polish into submission." She reaches for his hand, bandages and all, feeling calluses, and competence and caring beneath her fingers. Some decisions, once made, feel like coming home to a place you never knew you were looking for. The Sterling Foundation's annual Heritage Gala transforms the manor's grounds into a gleaming showcase of wealth and tradition. Vintage cars line the circular drive, their chrome catching the evening light like jewelry, but the space of honor remains empty, waiting for the DB5's grand entrance. Victoria stands at her bedroom window, watching guests arrive in their finest evening wear. The society page announcement sits on her vanity. "Wellington Sterling engagement expected at tonight's gala." Her mother had it framed. A knock at the door. "He's here," James announces quietly. Not Thomas Wellington, arriving in his customary Rolls-Royce. Marcus Chen, in the tailored tuxedo her grandfather's trust had specified decades ago, waiting by the DB5 at the service entrance. Victoria descends the back stairs, her evening gown, whispering against the steps. She chose silver birch for the color, the same shade as the DB5's restored paint. When she emerges into the evening air, Marcus's intake of breath is audible. "The car's not the only stunning restoration tonight," he says softly. Before she can respond, Catherine Sterling's voice cuts through the twilight. "Victoria, what are you doing at the service entrance? Thomas is waiting to escort you through the main hall." Her mother approaches rapidly, elegant in black silk that seems to absorb light rather than reflect it. She stops short at the sight of Marcus in his tuxedo, her practiced smile faltering. "Mr. Chen, the service staff entrance is around the corner." Her voice could freeze champagne. He's not service. Staff mother. Victoria moves to stand beside Marcus. He's co-trustee of the foundation. Catherine's laugh is precise, practiced. Darling, the heat must be affecting you. Now come along. Thomas is about to announce nothing. Victoria hands her mother the trust documents. Thomas will be announcing nothing tonight. Marcus and I will be presenting the foundation's recommitment to its original mission. Colour drains from Catherine's face as she scans the papers. This is absurd. The board's approval isn't required. Judge Harrison emerges from the shadows, his timing perfect. The trust structure is quite clear and quite legal. You knew about this? Catherine's composure cracks slightly. All this time, while I've been trying to secure Victoria's future, you've been trying to secure your vision of my future, Victoria corrects gently. But grandfather had a different vision, one that values craft over class, dedication over dividends. Craft, dedication, Catherine spits the words like poison. Is that what you call this infatuation with a mechanic? What would your grandfather say about throwing away everything we've built? Why don't we ask him? Marcus's quiet voice cuts through the tension. He reaches into his tuxedo jacket, withdrawing a letter. Your father-in-law left this with mine, to be opened tonight. Victoria recognizes the handwriting immediately. She reads aloud, My dearest Catherine, if you're reading this, then Victoria has found her way to the truth I always hoped she'd discover. The truth about value, about worth, about the dignity of work that demands both head and hands. She continues reading as twilight deepens around them. Her grandfather's words paint a picture of a foundation dedicated to preserving craftsmanship, to bridging social divides through shared appreciation of excellence. With each sentence, Catherine's rigid posture softens slightly. He never told. Me? She whispers finally. He tried. Victoria's voice is gentle now. All those afternoons in the garage, he was trying to show us both. We just couldn't see it then. From the front of the house comes the sound of orchestral music. The gala is beginning. Guests will be wondering about the missing DB5, about the absent guest of honor. You have a choice, Mother. Fight us, and these documents become public record. In court, support us, and you help shape the foundation's new direction. Victoria holds out her hand. Help me restore more than just appearances. Catherine looks from her daughter to Marcus, seeing perhaps for the first time not a grease-stained mechanic, but a master craftsman in evening wear. She sees the DB5 gleaming with perfection that only dedication can achieve. Most importantly, she sees her daughter standing straight and sure, no longer fitting the mold she'd tried to impose. The orchestra starts another piece. Soon the guests will need explanation, direction, purpose. Catherine Sterling has spent a lifetime managing perceptions, maintaining appearances. Perhaps, Victoria thinks, watching emotions play across her. Mother's carefully maintained facade. It's time for her to restore something real. Thomas Wellington's voice carries from the front drive. Catherine, Victoria, the guests are asking about the car. Catherine squares her shoulders, and Victoria holds her breath, waiting to see which path her mother will choose. The familiar pattern of power and pretense, or the harder road of authentic change. Catherine Sterling stands motionless in the gathering dusk, her daughter's words hanging in the air between them. Thomas Wellington's voice calls again from the front drive. More insistent now, the orchestra's music drifts around them like a soundtrack to this pivotal moment. Victoria watches her mother's face, seeing for the first time the subtle signs of strain beneath the perfect makeup, the slight tightness around her eyes, the barely visible tremor in her perfectly manicured hands as she holds her father-in-law's letter. All these years, Catherine says finally, her voice barely above a whisper, I thought I was preserving his legacy. I never understood what that legacy truly was. She looks at the DB5, its silver birch paint glowing in the evening light. Then at Marcus, whose quiet dignity in his grandfather's tuxedo speaks louder than any social pretense. Finally, at her daughter, standing tall in her matching silver gown, every inch her grandfather's heir. The Foundation's original mission, Catherine continues, something shifting behind her eyes. It wasn't about maintaining barriers, was it? It was about breaking them down through excellence, through understanding, Victoria corrects gently, through respecting the work itself, whatever form it takes. The sound of footsteps on gravel announces Thomas Wellington's approach. Catherine straightens, and for a moment Victoria fears her mother will revert to type, will choose the familiar path of power and position. Instead, Catherine does something none of them expect. She laughs, a real laugh, nothing like her usual. Practice social trill. "Edward, you impossible man," she says to the evening air. "You're still teaching me, aren't you?" She turns to face Thomas as he rounds the corner, his expression darkening at the sight of Marcus in formal wear. Before he can speak, Catherine raises her hand in a gesture that brooks no argument. "Thomas, dear, I'm afraid there's been a change of plans." Her society voice is back, but now it carries an edge of steel rather than silk. "The announcement you plan to make, it won't be necessary." "Catherine, surely you can't mean—" He stops, seeing the trust documents in her hand. "What's this?" "This, Thomas, is restoration in its truest form." She hands him the papers with a smile that makes him step back slightly. "The Foundation is returning to its original mission. Victoria and Mr. Chen will be making the announcement shortly. A mechanic running the Sterling Foundation." Thomas's face flushes with anger. "This is preposterous. The board's approval isn't required." Catherine cuts him off smoothly. "And I should mention, Mr. Chen isn't just a mechanic. He's a master craftsman who understands more about true value than either of us ever has." She glances at her daughter. "It took me far too long to see that." Victoria feels Marcus's hand. Find hers, strong and sure despite its bandages. Her mother's eyes flick to their joined fingers, then back to their faces. Something like wonder crosses her expression. "Well," Catherine says briskly, "we have guests waiting and history to restore." She smooths her silk dress with practiced hands. "Victoria, you and Marcus will drive the DB5 around to the front. I'll announce the Foundation's new direction myself." Thomas Wellington stands frozen, his carefully ordered world crumbling around him. "Catherine, think about what you're doing. The social implications, Catherine interrupts, of the Sterling Foundation finally fulfilling its true purpose, of supporting genuine craft and dedication, of breaking down barriers that never should have existed." Her smile is genuine now, years dropping away from her face. "I think we'll manage just fine." She turns to Marcus, extending her hand. "Welcome to the family, Mr. Chen, though it seems you've been part of it longer than any of us knew." As Catherine sweeps away to manage the guests, her natural element of social orchestration now turned to a new purpose. Victoria feels tears threatening to spill. Marcus squeezes her hand. "Your mother," he says quietly, "appears to have excellent restoration potential herself." Victoria laughs, the sound pure and free in the evening air. They walk to the DB5 together, its perfectly restored form representing so much more than mere mechanical excellence. As Marcus holds the door for her, she catches their reflection in the polished chrome. Two people from different worlds, brought together by craftsmanship, vision, and the careful plans of fathers who saw beyond the barriers of their time. The engine purrs to life, its sound rich with promise. Everything that needs restoration, Victoria thinks, watching her mother mount the main stairs to address the waiting crowd, begins with the courage to see its true value. The DB5 glides around the circular drive of Sterling Manor, its engine note perfect against the evening's orchestral backdrop. Heads turn as one, conversations stuttering to silence as the silver car comes to rest at the center of the exhibition. Space. In the passenger seat, Victoria catches glimpses of dropped champagne glasses and raised eyebrows as Marcus shifts the car into park with practiced precision. Catherine Sterling stands at the top of the manor's grand staircase, commanding Attention with the ease of decades of social orchestration. But tonight, there's something different in her bearing, a genuine warmth that transforms her usual imperial presence into something more approachable, more real. "Distinguished guests," she begins, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent gathering. "We are here tonight not just to celebrate heritage, but to restore it to its truest form." Victoria and Marcus emerge from the DB5, a matched pair in silver birch and black formal wear. The whispers start immediately, spreading through the crowd like wind through autumn leaves. But Catherine continues, her voice growing stronger with each word. 30 years ago, my father-in-law Edward Sterling established this foundation with a vision that many of us, myself included, failed to fully comprehend. Tonight, we return to that original mission, celebrating and supporting those who maintain the knowledge of how things work, how to make them whole again. She gestures to the DB5, gleaming under the carefully arranged lighting. This car represents more than just mechanical restoration. It embodies a philosophy that transcends social boundaries, that values dedication over distinction, craft over class. Marcus steps forward, his bandaged hands visible against his black tuxedo as he begins explaining the restoration process. His voice carries the quiet authority of someone who knows his craft intimately, who understands that true excellence needs no social polish to shine. Victoria watches the crowd's reaction, seeing the subtle shift as they're drawn in by his expertise, his genuine passion for the work. Even the most traditional members of their social circle lean forward, caught up in his description of the car's mechanical symphony. Every component, Marcus explains, tells its own story. The engine block bears witness to decades of careful maintenance. The transmission holds the memory of every shift, every journey. Our task wasn't just to repair, but to listen to these stories, to honor them in the restoration. He opens the hood, revealing the immaculate engine bay. Society matrons in evening wear draw closer, their curiosity overcoming ingrained distance. A retired judge peers at the perfectly restored mechanics, asking questions that reveal his own hidden passion for engineering. Victoria steps up beside Marcus, their shoulders touching lightly. "This car," she adds, "came with detailed maintenance records spanning decades. They reveal more than just mechanical history. They show the relationship between craftsman and machine, between dedication and excellence." Catherine descends the stairs, moving through the crowd with practiced grace. She joins them at the car, completing a tableau that would have seemed impossible just hours ago. "The Sterling Foundation," Catherine announces, "will now focus on preserving and celebrating craft in all its forms. We will support apprenticeship programs, fund workshops that teach traditional skills, and bridge the artificial divides between different types of excellence." She turns to Marcus, extending her hand formally. Mr. Chen will join the foundation as co-trustee, bringing his expertise and vision to this renewed mission. Together with my daughter, they will guide us toward a future that honors all forms of dedication and skill. The crowd murmurs, processing this transformation. Victoria sees Thomas Wellington slip away toward the valet station, his carefully planned evening in ruins. But others step forward, a renowned architect who admits to spending weekends woodworking, a corporate CEO who restores vintage motorcycles in secret. As the evening progresses, the traditional barriers begin to blur. Wealthy collectors engage in passionate discussions with master craftsmen about the soul of mechanical things. Society women who've never thought about what makes their world listen intently to explanations of engineering principles. The DB5 stands at the center of it all, its perfect restoration a testament to the power of understanding deeper value. Victoria watches her mother move through the crowd, smoothing ruffled feathers here, encouraging unexpected connections there, orchestrating social transformation with the same skill she once used to maintain divisions. Marcus finds her hand, his bandaged fingers intertwining with hers. Above them, The stars emerge in the evening sky, witnessing a different kind of restoration, one that reaches far beyond chrome and steel to touch the connections between people, between worlds, between ways of seeing value in all its forms. Dawn breaks over Chen's classic restorations, painting the workshop in shades of promise. Victoria arrives early, wearing work clothes that no longer feel like a rebellion. The DB5 waits in the morning light, restored and ready for its first reel. Journey since the gala 3 days ago, Marcus is already there, brewing coffee in that ancient percolator that's become as much a part of their story as the car itself. His bandaged hands move with practiced care as he pours 2 cups, one in a Sterling Foundation china cup that Catherine insisted on sending to the workshop, the other in his familiar garage mug. "Ready?" he asks, handing her the china cup with a smile that acknowledges the symbolism. Almost. Victoria places a leather-bound journal on his workbench. One last thing to restore. It's her grandfather's original logbook, the one that started everything. Opening it to a fresh page, she begins to write. Today marks the beginning of a new journey. The DB5 has been restored not just to its original condition, but to its true purpose, bridging worlds that should never have been separated. Marcus reads over her shoulder, then takes the pen. His entry follows hers. Every restoration teaches us something. This one taught us that some things, craftsmanship, dedication, love, transcend all boundaries. They close the logbook together, adding it to the growing collection of documents that chart their story. The trust papers, Catherine's surprisingly heartfelt acceptance speech from the gala, the first draft of the Foundation's new mission statement. "Mother called this morning," Victoria says, sipping her coffee. "She's already lined up 3 master craftsmen who want to start apprenticeship programs. One's a violin maker who's been repairing instruments in obscurity for 40 years. The Foundation's first new project?" Marcus asks, though his tone suggests he already knows the answer. "She thinks we should document their techniques, create a school where they can pass on their knowledge." Victoria smiles at the memory of her mother's enthusiasm. She's talking about preserving the soul of craft now. I barely recognize her. Some restorations run deeper than others. Marcus reaches for his father's old toolbox, now holding both sets of family papers, Sterling and Chen, intermingled like the 2 worlds they represent. The workshop phone rings, that faithful rotary model that witnessed so much of their story. Victoria answers it, her smile widening as she listens. "That was Judge Harrison," she says after hanging up. "The Foundation's new charter has been officially registered. We're ready to start our real work." Marcus nods toward the DB5. "Speaking of real work, there's a mountain road about 2 hours from here. My father used to say it's where you really learn a car's character. Your grandfather's notes mention it too." Victoria's eyes light up with understanding. Their fathers had driven these roads together, testing cars and breaking down barriers decades before their children would complete the journey. They lock up the workshop together, everything in its proper place. The logbook rests beside the phone, ready for new entries. The tools hang in their assigned spots, waiting for the next restoration project. Even the old coffee maker seems to wish them well, its familiar scent lingering in the air. The DB5's engine turns over with perfect harmony. Victoria settles into the passenger seat, watching Marcus adjust the mirrors with the same care he brings to every mechanical task. His bandaged hands rest lightly on the wheel. A craftsman's hands, capable of both strength and delicacy. As they pull out of the workshop, Victoria catches glimpses of their reflection in the windows. A master mechanic and an heiress, both finally free to be exactly who they are. The morning sun catches the DB5's chrome, throwing back brilliant patterns that seem to paint their future on the workshop walls. "Your mother's planning a Foundation dinner next week," Marcus says, as they turn onto the main road. Black tie again. She's invited every craftsperson she can find, from watchmakers to stonemasons. "Crossing boundaries already," Victoria muses. "She's restoring herself faster than we restored the car." They drive in comfortable silence for a while, the DB5's engine providing perfect accompaniment to their thoughts. The city falls away behind them, and the road begins to climb into hills that seem to offer infinite possibility. "You know," Marcus says finally, "your grandfather wrote something in those letters we found about how some journeys are actually returns, coming back to truths that were always waiting to be discovered." Victoria reaches for his hand, feeling the rough bandages against her skin. "Then let's discover them together," she says, as the DB5 carries them toward tomorrow. 1 year later, the workshop still smells of coffee and motor oil, but subtle changes mark the passage of time. The old rotary phone now sits beside a sleek computer terminal, where apprentices document restoration techniques for the Foundation's archives. Victoria's engineering books share shelf space with Marcus's technical manuals, their spines worn from frequent use. The biggest change hangs on the wall, a set of workshop keys mounted in a simple frame, accompanied by a photograph. In it, Edward, Sterling and Chen Ming Wei stand before a younger version of the DB5, their faces bright with shared vision. Below the photo, a simple plaque reads, "Some restorations take generations." Marcus works at his bench, carefully showing a young apprentice, a former banking executive who finally followed his passion for mechanical craft, how to calibrate a vintage chronometer. His hands, no longer bandaged but bearing proud marks of his dedication, move with practiced precision. Victoria enters through the bay doors, having just finished teaching an engineering seminar in what used to be Sterling Manor's formal dining room. The Foundation's School of Restoration Arts is thriving, breaking down barriers with every class. "Mother called," she says, settling onto her familiar stool. "The first graduation ceremony for the apprenticeship program is next month. She's insisting on having it in the workshop rather than the Manor's ballroom." Marcus smiles, remembering Catherine's own restoration over the past year, from rigid guardian of social boundaries to passionate advocate for craft and authenticity. Did she mention the new scholarship program? The one funding master craftsmen to teach their skills. It's already oversubscribed. Victoria reaches for the logbook, no longer just a record of mechanical repairs, but a chronicle of transformations, both physical and spiritual. She's finally understanding what grandfather and your father knew all along. The DB5 rests in its usual spot, still perfect, but no longer untouchable. Now it serves as both teaching tool and testament, helping new generations understand that true value lies in the dedication to craft, in the willingness to restore not just machines, but connections between people and possibilities. Marcus closes his tool chest, the one that once held secret letters and now holds future hopes. In its shadow lies the truth they've both come to understand, that some kinds of restoration work never really end. It simply evolves, passing from one generation to the next, bridging worlds and breaking down barriers with every careful adjustment, every loving repair. Outside, the sun sets on another day of honest work and shared purpose. Through the workshop windows, its light catches the DB5's chrome, throwing back reflections of all that was, all that is, and all that's yet to be restored. Victoria and Marcus stand together in this place that's become their shared kingdom of craft and care. Their hands find each other naturally now, his roughened by dedication, hers marked by willing work. In the gathering dusk, they are no longer mechanic and heiress, but simply two people who understood that the